Alex learned early that money changed people fast. It wasn't a slow process. It was like a light switch. 1 second someone was who they were, and the next, they were different because of a few dollar bills. He was 13 when he really saw it happen. His mom worked nights cleaning big office buildings downtown. It wasn't safe to leave him alone in their neighborhood that late, so he went with her. He wasn't there to play. He knew the rules. Stay quiet, stay out of the way, and don't touch anything that isn't yours. He'd sit at some big shot's desk doing his homework while his mom scrubbed the floors nearby. Usually no one noticed him. He was just part of the furniture. But one Tuesday, a man in an expensive suit stayed late. He stopped at the door when he saw Alex sitting in a swivel chair that cost more than their car. The man didn't look angry. Instead, his face softened into an expression that made Alex's stomach turn. It was pity. The man reached into his wallet, pulled out a $50 bill, and held it toward Alex's mother. For him, the man said, get him something on the way home. The way he said it made it clear it wasn't a gift. It was an order. He didn't ask if Alex was hungry or if his mother needed help. He just looked at her stained uniform and her tired eyes and decided right then who they were. By handing over that money, he wasn't just being a friend. He was making sure everyone knew he was the one in charge of the room. He leaned in with a small, knowing smile, the kind people save for stray dogs or homeless people. In his own head, he was the hero of the story. He probably went home and told his wife about the poor woman he helped, feeling righteous and tall because he'd tossed a bit of pocket change at a problem he didn't want to actually understand. He was buying the right to feel like a saint at her expense. To him, the $50 was nothing, the price of a decent lunch, but to Alex, it was the price of his mother's pride. He saw the way the man waited for her to say thank you, hanging on to the moment like he was waiting for a standing ovation. He didn't want to help, he wanted to be worshipped. Alex watched his mother's hand shake. He wanted her to say no. He wanted her to tell the man they didn't need his pity. But she didn't. She couldn't. The rent was due in 3 days, and $50 was the difference between a roof and a question mark. She took the bill and tucked it into her pocket, her fingers brushing the man's hand for a second like she was accepting a leash. "Thank you, sir," she said. Her voice sounded thin and small, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. She smiled, but it was a hollow look that didn't reach her eyes. In that moment, she wasn't a hard worker anymore. She was exactly what the man wanted her to be, a charity case who knew her place. When they got home, she sat at the kitchen table for a long time. She didn't even take off her coat. Then she put her head in her hands and cried, not with loud sobs, but with a quiet, steady shaking of her shoulders. Alex stood in the doorway, watching her. He looked at the money on the table and then at his mother. He realized she wasn't crying because she was sad. She was crying because she had been bought. He started to think about the man in the suit. That man didn't know his mother's name. He didn't know she stayed up late to help Alex with his essays or that she was the strongest person Alex knew. To that man, she was just a poor woman who could be fixed with a piece of paper. And the worst part, the part that made Alex's chest ache, was that the man was right. The $50 was useful. It would pay for the groceries and the electricity. It was helpful, and that was exactly why it was so dangerous. He saw the trap then. If you needed the money, the person giving it to you got to decide who you were. They got to play the hero, and you had to play the victim. You had to change your voice, hide your pride, and say thank you for the privilege of being pitied. Alex realized then that money didn't have to be mean to be powerful. It didn't have to shout or hit you. It just had to be something you couldn't say no to. Once it entered a room, it rewrote the rules. It turned his mother into a stranger and a kind man into a saint. He looked at his mother's bowed head and made a silent promise. He would never let a dollar bill define him. He would never be the man giving the money to feel big, and he would never be the person forced to take it to survive. On the other side, we have Sophia. For Sophia, money wasn't a weapon or a trap. It was just the floor beneath her feet. It was the reason the world stayed level and the lights stayed on. Her father was a man of few words, but the ones he used were usually about clarity. "The world is a messy place, Sophia," he'd say, never looking up from his paper. "People are unpredictable, emotions are expensive, but numbers numbers never lie to you. She grew up in a house where problems didn't fester. If a pipe leaked, a man in a jumpsuit appeared and fixed it before lunch. If a teacher was unfair, a phone call was made and the problem vanished. By the time she was 12, Sophia understood that stress was something that happened to people who didn't have the right resources. She didn't see herself as a villain. In fact, she thought she was the most helpful person in any room. She remembered a girl in her middle school, Maya, whose family was struggling. Maya's backpack was held together by duct tape, and she always looked like she was carrying the weight of the building on her shoulders. One afternoon, Sophia simply bought her a new one, not just a basic bag, but the best one in the store, filled with the expensive pens everyone wanted. Sophia expected Maya to be happy. She expected the stress to vanish. Instead, Maya looked at the bag like it was a bomb. She turned red, mumbled a thank you, and never spoke to Sophia again. Sophia's father had just laughed when she told him. "She's just confused, Sophia. She thinks pride is worth more than a good bag. Don't worry. Eventually, she'll realize the bag lasts longer than the pride." That was the lesson Sophia took to heart. Money simplified things. As she got older, she saw it everywhere. When she took her friends out for dinner and handed over her card before the bill even hit the table, she saw them relax. The awkward silence about who owed what simply evaporated. They laughed more. They liked her more. She wasn't buying them. She was providing the atmosphere for them to be their best selves. She never asked if they would still be there if the money ran out. To her, that was like asking if a boat would still float if you took away the hull. It was a pointless, hypothetical question. She had never seen money fail to solve a problem. It was the only thing in her life that was 100% reliable. That was her truth. Until the afternoon, she walked into a cramped, humid restaurant and met a pair of eyes that didn't look at her like she was a savior. They looked at her like she was a threat.